Orchestrated entirely fresh memoir narrative with new characters, setting, and financial scheme. Orchestrated entirely fresh memoir narrative with new characters, setting, and financial scheme. Take your junk and don't bother coming back. This isn't your house anymore. My own son said that to me on the last Tuesday of November, in the kitchen I'd wired with my own 2 hands. And then his wife grabbed my father's old steel tackle box off the mudroom floor and hurled it at my feet so hard the latch popped and it skidded across the porch into the snow. I was 67 years old. I stood there in my work coat with the wind coming off the lake and the porch light buzzing, and I watched the door close on me, and I thought, plain as anything, well, that's it then. That's how it ends. If you've ever been made to feel like you've simply lived too long, like you're a chore somebody's tired of doing, then you already know the kind of cold I'm talking about. It doesn't come from the weather. My name is Hollis. For 38 years I ran harbor marine repair on the water in a little town up on Lake Michigan called Gull Harbor. Boats, outboards, snowblowers in the winter. If it had an engine and it quit, people brought it to me. My wife Maureen ran the front counter and the books and most of my temper until a stroke took her 6 years back, quick, in the garden on a Sunday. After that, the house got quiet in a way I never got used to. I kept the shop going a few more years out of stubbornness. Then I sold the business, but kept the building and the 4 acres of shoreline my father bought after the war for almost nothing. Lakefront like that is worth a fortune now. The developers send me a letter about twice a year. Last appraisal bought the land and the old house at a little over $2.5 million. I had 1 child, my son, smart kid, charming, the kind who could sell you your own watch back. He went off and got into finance. Came home 3 years ago with a wife and my granddaughter. 6 years old, gap-toothed, called me Pop, and said the city wasn't good for the little one. Could they stay a while? A while turned into for good. I didn't mind. The house had been too quiet for too long. Having a child run down those stairs in the morning made the whole place feel like it had a heartbeat again. But somewhere in the 2nd year, my son started in on the land. Pop, you've got to think about estate planning, he'd say, easy, over coffee. If something happened to you, the taxes would eat us alive. Let's just put the property in a trust. Protect it for Hazel. I'm 67, I'd tell him, not 97. I'll do my planning when I'm good and ready. He'd smile and let it drop, but it never really dropped. It came back the way water comes back, a little higher each time. The trust, then a power of attorney, just in case. Then a quitclaim deed his lawyer had already drawn up, sitting on the counter one morning next to the cereal like it was a permission slip. His wife stayed out of it. My daughter-in-law was a quiet woman, careful, an accountant by training, the kind who listened more than she talked. I'd liked her from the start because she was good to Hazel and she laughed at my bad jokes. But that fall she went somewhere behind her eyes. She stopped sleeping. I'd come down for water at 2 in the morning and find her sitting at the kitchen table in the dark, not doing anything, just sitting. I thought it was the marriage going soft. I had no idea. That last Tuesday my son slapped the deed down on the table and a pen on top of it. Sign it, tonight. I'm not signing anything I haven't read with my own lawyer. His face changed. I'd never seen it do that. You're being a selfish old man. You know that? This place is worth $2.5 million, and you're sitting on it like a dog on a porch. What happens when you fall down those stairs, huh? What happens when you have a stroke, like Mum did? That last part landed like a slap. I stood up. You watch your mouth about your mother. Or what? He stepped close. You live under my roof now. I built this roof, every rafter. And that's when his wife stood up so fast her chair fell over. Her voice came out shaking and mean. I'm done. I am done with this. Get out. Take your junk and get out of my house. She went to the mudroom, snatched up my old tackle box and threw it at my feet. Go. I looked at my son. He had his arms crossed and a little smile on his mouth, satisfied, like a problem was solving itself. He nodded at the door. You heard her. So I went. What else do you do? I picked nothing up. I just walked out into the snow, and my daughter-in-law slammed the door behind me, and through the glass I saw her turn to my son, and I swear to God she looked relieved. I made it as far as the bus shelter down by the boat launch before my legs quit. I sat on the cold metal bench with a lake roaring black in front of me, and I cried, which I am not ashamed to tell you, the first time since Maureen's funeral. 67 years old, thrown out like spoiled meat by my own boy, sitting at a bus stop with one steel box to my name. It was the box that finally got me up. It had landed in the snow and slid most of the way down the launch ramp, and I went after it, the way you'd go after a dog, out of pure habit. 40 years that box had held my fishing tackle and my spare plug wrenches. I figured I'd open it up, find some rusted hooks and a dead reel, and have a good bitter laugh. I worked the busted latch with my numb thumbs and lifted the lid under the one street light that still worked. It was full of money. Cash. Banded stacks of hundreds, vacuum-sealed in plastic, packed in tight where my lures used to be. I pulled one out and then another, and I couldn't make my hand stop. I counted later, in the truck, twice, because I didn't believe it. $620,000, and underneath it all, taped to the bottom, a brass key and a folded letter with my name on it in my daughter-in-law's small, neat handwriting. I read it under that streetlight with the snow coming down on the paper. Pop, if you're reading this, it means I did it, and I'm so sorry. Every word I screamed at you tonight was a lie. I needed him to believe I was on his side. And I needed you out of that house before he could hurt you. Pop, your son is in serious trouble. The fundy runs lost everything 2 years ago. Bad bets, then worse ones. Then a man in Chicago he borrows from now. He's been paying old investors with new investors' money to hide it. There are 40-some families in this county. Retired teachers, the man who ran the bait shop, your friends from the VFW, who think their savings are sitting safe in his fund, and there is nothing there. He is desperate. I overheard him and his partner planning to take this property and disappear. Pop, they talked about an accident. A fall. At your age, they said, nobody would ask questions. I tried to get proof, but he watches me, he watches my phone. He keeps everything locked. The money in this box is mine. Savings from before I ever met him. Money I hid because something always told me to. Go to the address this key opens. It's a cabin up past the county line, paid in cash, nobody knows. I'm taking Hazel, and I'll meet you there. Don't call, don't text. Just come. I love you, and I should have told you the truth a month ago. I read it 3 times. The rage came up in me slow, and then all at once. But underneath the rage was something else, something I hadn't felt since I was a young man. A clean, cold purpose. My daughter-in-law had walked into fire to get me out alive. She'd carried a secret that could have gotten her killed. And she didn't have enough to stop him. She needed help. She needed me. I drove north on the county road with the heater roaring and the snow flying at the windshield like sparks. The cabin was an hour out, a little hunting place with a tin roof, smoke already coming from the chimney. The door opened before I knocked. My daughter-in-law stood there grey-faced and worn down to nothing, and behind her on the couch my granddaughter slept under a quilt with her thumb in her mouth. And the woman who had screamed at me to get out 3 hours earlier put her hand over her mouth and broke. I held her on that cold porch while she shook. I hated it, she kept saying. When I threw your box, when I said those things, I watched your face. You saved my life, I told her. There's nothing to be sorry for. When she finally got herself together, we sat at the little table and she showed me what she had. It wasn't enough, and she knew it. She'd recorded a few minutes on a phone she kept hidden. My son's voice, low, talking to his partner Garrett about the old man and the property, and how a man my age falls all the time. She had screenshots of statements that didn't add up, transfers to an account in Belize. a calendar full of names of local people who thought they were investing in their grandchildren's college. "I took it to a lawyer," she said. "Quietly. He told me talk isn't a crime. They'll call it venting. A good attorney walks him out the door. We need him to actually do something we can put in front of a jury. Forge your name. Sell what isn't his. Move the stolen money." I sat there with my coffee going cold, and I thought about it the way I used to think about an engine that wouldn't run right. Not the noise it was making, but the why underneath. "Then we give him the chance," I said. "If I disappear, he gets reckless. He thinks I'm out of the picture. He forges that deed and sells my land and runs. And the second he does, he's not a man saying ugly things at a kitchen table anymore. He's a felon with his name on the paper." She looked at me a long time. "That's dangerous." "He planned to put me in the ground for 4 acres of shoreline," I said. "And he's planning to take what's left from 40 families who trusted him. I'm not going to outrun this. I'm going to outpatience it." I reached across and took her hand. "You did the hard part alone for a month. You don't have to anymore." The next morning I made 2 phone calls. The first was to an old friend, a man named Hank Mercer who'd been county sheriff back when I was young, and rowdy, and had once let me sleep off a bad night in his back seat instead of his cell. He'd retired into private work, finding people, watching people. The quiet kind of trouble. He picked up on the second ring, and when I told him what I needed, there wasn't a pause in him at all. "I've been waiting 30 years to be useful again," he said. "Tell me where to be." The second call Hank set up, a forensic accountant named Delia, a woman who could read a stolen dollar the way I could read a seized piston. By the end of the week, we had a 4th chair at the table too, an investigator named Naomi Park, out of the state's elder fraud unit, who'd been getting complaints about my son's fund for months, but never could get inside the door. She brought a federal name with her, because securities fraud and wire fraud cross a lot of lines. She looked through everything my daughter-in-law had gathered, slow and careful, and when she finished, she set the papers down. "This is solid," she said, "but it's a foundation, not a house. The conspiracy talk on its own. A jury wrings their hands. The fraud, though. If he forges a deed and moves money over state lines, that's federal, that's clean, that's years." She looked at me. "We'd need him to do it himself, on his own. With his own hand. Can you give us that?" "I can give you a dead man," I said. "Bernard Brooks falls down the stairs and Hollis falls off the map. Let's see what my boy does when he thinks he's already won." So I disappeared. It is a strange thing to erase yourself. Hank showed me how. We cut my cards, killed my phone, paid cash for a flip phone that called only him. I lived in that cabin like a ghost, and 300 miles of nothing felt like an ocean. Back in Gull Harbor, my daughter-in-law played her part better than any actress alive. She told the neighbors I'd left in a rage after a fight just took off, that she was worried sick. She let my son comfort her in front of people. "He'll cool off and come crawling back," he told the man next door, loud enough to carry. "Stubborn old goat." Hank had a contact run a false trail. My name on a motel register down in Indiana. A gas card used near Gary. Anybody checking would think I'd driven south and kept going. And then, the way Hank promised he would, my son took the rope we left lying out and started tying his own knots. Week 1, my daughter-in-law's hidden camera caught him on the phone with a man who forged documents for a living. He needed a signature that would pass a county recorder's eye, and he didn't blink at the price. Week 2, that forged signature, my signature. The H and the loop on the L I've made the same way since grade school. Only wrong, only a stranger's idea of it. Showed up on a quitclaim deed, transferring my father's land to my son. Hank photographed him walking it into the county building himself. Week 3, he took my daughter-in-law to the bank, told her they had to protect the family's assets now that Pop's gone, and borrowed against the property he'd stolen, a bridge loan near $2 million, against 4 acres that were still legally mine. She wore a recorder. We caught every word. Week 4, the money started to move, $100,000 to the man in Chicago he owed. chunks more sliding to that account in Belize, the rest disappearing into the leak he'd been bailing for 2 years. I watched it all on a laptop in a cold cabin, and I'll be honest with you, some nights it about broke me. Not the fraud. The other thing, because my daughter-in-law sent me one more recording in the 6th week, and in it my son and his partner were talking low. And Garrett said, "What about your wife? She's been asking questions." And my boy, who I taught to bait a hook and tie his shoes, said, "If she gets to be a problem, she goes the way the old man was going to go. I'm not spitting anything in a divorce." I sat alone in the dark and listened to my son discuss killing the mother of my grandchild like he was pricing a transmission. And whatever was left of the father in me that still hoped, that still made excuses, that died right there. What was left was just a man who builds things and knows that the way you take a thing apart is patient and total and all at once. His big night was the party he handed us himself. He'd booked the Yacht Club ballroom for an investor appreciation gala, the unveiling of the fund's new chapter, 200 guests, the mayor, a state senator, a reporter from the Grand Rapids paper, the very people whose money was already gone, dressed up to applaud the man who'd taken it. It was, he told my daughter-in-law, his coronation. We decided to crown him. Naomi's people would attend as guests. Hank rigged the ballroom's sound and video system with an override that, once it fired, could not be stopped from the booth. Delia and I built the thing it would play. 12 minutes, no music, no tricks, just the truth laid out the way you'd lay out a case to a jury who'd never forgive being lied to. The recordings. The forged signature beside my real one, blown up huge. The differences circled in red, the bank documents. The river of stolen retirement money traced from 40 families' accounts into one man's hands and out to Belize. And at the end, after all of it, me, alive, saying my own name. The night of the gala, I stood backstage in the suit I'd worn to my granddaughter's baptism, and I watched 200 people in their good clothes take their seats. My daughter-in-law sat near the front with her hands folded, calm as still water, and only I could see that her thumbnail was white from pressing it. Then my son walked out under the lights, tan and grinning, working the room like a man who owned the world, and he had no idea that in 12 minutes the world was going to own him. He started smooth, thanked the mayor, thanked the senator, said something about trust and legacy that made my stomach turn. And none of it, he said, gesturing to the front row, would be possible without my wife. Polite applause. She nodded, faint. He raised his little clicker to start his slides. The screen went black. He clicked again, tapped the mic. A whine of feedback rolled across the room, and then my voice came out of every speaker in that ballroom. "Evening, son. Surprised to hear me." The color went out of his face like someone pulled a plug. The screen lit up with mine, and for the next 12 minutes, nobody in that room breathed wrong, because the truth was playing, and the truth was awful, and it was his. His own voice filled the hall. The old man falls all the time. Nobody asks questions. People put their hands over their mouths. The forged signature came up beside my real one, 20 feet tall, and a man I recognized from the VFW stood halfway out of his chair. The stolen money scrolled past in numbers, and the retired teacher, 2 tables over, started to cry. And when it came to the part where my son said his own wife would go the way the old man was going to go, a woman screamed, and the senator was on his feet, and my boy was clawing at a microphone that Hank had killed 30 seconds in. Then the lights cut, and a single spot came up at the back of the room. On me. I walked down the center aisle in my baptism suit with my heart going like a hammer, and the noise that room made. I'll never forget it as long as I live. My son stood frozen on his stage, sweating through $2,000 of jacket, and when I got to the foot of the steps, he whispered, "You were gone." I was patient, I said. "There's a difference." Naomi Park and her people came in from every door at once. They put the cuffs on him, on his own stage, under his own lights, in front of every person he'd robbed, and they took his partner out of his seat at the same time. My granddaughter wasn't there to see it. My daughter-in-law had made sure of that. But my daughter-in-law was, and she walked up to the man she'd been married to and said, "Clear enough for the front rows to hear. Hazel and I are leaving. You'll never get near her again." Then she turned around and put her arms around me, and I held my son's wife while they led my son away in handcuffs past the cameras, and the strangest, simplest thing came over me. Not triumph. Relief. The relief of a man who has finally set down something heavy he's been carrying for too long. Justice up here is slow, but it's thorough. The video was too much to fight. My son pleaded out rather than let it all go in front of a jury, and he got 17 years in federal prison for wire fraud, securities fraud, forgery, and conspiracy. His partner took a deal and got 8. The fraudulent deed was voided, and the land came back to my name. The bank's $2 million lien was wiped, their problem, not mine, for lending against a forged signature. What could be clawed back from Belize and from the seized assets got divided up among those 40 families. They didn't get all of it. But the bait shop man got enough to keep his house, and the retired teacher got enough to stop crying when she talked about it, and that's not nothing. My daughter-in-law's divorce was final by spring. Her $620,000 stayed hers, separate property, earned before she ever met him, never touched by any of it. She got full custody of my granddaughter. Clean break. Here's the part the developers don't understand. I didn't sell the land. I had men in suits practically begging me to, waving numbers that would have let me die rich on a beach somewhere. But I kept thinking about that ballroom full of people who trusted the wrong smile, and about how a stranger's idea of my signature almost cost me everything. So I took the old marine shop on the water, the building I'd kept all these years and never known why, and I turned it into something. We call it the Second Wind. 3 days a week, it's a free repair shop where folks over 55 learn to fix their own engines, their own furnaces, their own busted latches, so they never have to feel helpless in front of somebody charging them double. And 1 day a week, it's a different kind of class. My daughter-in-law runs that one, sitting at a folding table with her accountant's patients, teaching retired people how to read a statement, how to smell a Ponzi, how to tell a real opportunity from a charming man who's already spending their money, so that what happened to 40 families in this county doesn't happen to 40 more. Hank comes by and pretends to supervise. Delia does our books. My granddaughter does her homework at the workbench that used to be mine, swinging her feet, calling me Pop, and some afternoons I have to step out back by the water for a minute because the place sounds like it has a heartbeat again. People ask me, now that I've been in the paper, how I came back from all that. I always tell them the same thing. I didn't come back. The man who handed his own son a pen at his kitchen table and hoped, that man is gone, and I don't miss him. I move forward into being somebody who knows what he's worth. My boy thought 67 meant slow, soft, finished. He confused age with weakness, and that was the one mistake he couldn't take back, because age isn't weakness. Age is knowing how to wait. Age is 40 years of taking broken things apart and understanding that you don't fix them by force. You fix them with patience and a plan, and knowing exactly when to turn the wrench. That steel box my daughter-in-law threw at my feet. People hear the story and think it was an insult. It wasn't. It was the best gift anyone ever gave me. It was a brave woman's way of saying, I trust you. Fight back. And God help me, I did. Brett had a partner and a forger and an accountant. I had a daughter-in-law who risked her life, an old sheriff who never forgot a debt, and a little girl who calls me Pop. He had accomplices. I had family. That's the whole difference right there. And it's the only difference that's ever mattered. So, if you're sitting somewhere tonight, feeling like the world's already decided you've lived long enough to step aside, don't you believe it for 1 second. You are not your age. You are not the worst thing that's been done to you. You are what you decide to do next. I decided to fight, and I sleep just fine now, and at 68 I have never once been happier to wake up in the morning and hear that engine running. The thing I keep turning over on the quiet nights out by the water is how small the moment was that saved my life. A box thrown at my feet in the snow. 3 ugly sentences from a woman who loved me, said loud, so the man in the kitchen would believe them. If I'd been too proud to pick that box up, if I'd driven off into the dark feeling sorry for myself, none of the rest would have happened. Everything that mattered hung on me being willing to bend down one more time. My son made one mistake, and it wasn't greed, though there was plenty of that. His mistake was thinking 67 meant slow, soft, done. He looked at me and saw a man already half out of the way. What he never understood is that the years he sneered at were the very thing that beat him. I didn't outrun Trevor. I outweighted him. I read the situation the way I'd read a sick engine for 40 years. Not the noise it was making, but the why underneath. And I built the case the way you build anything that lasts, one patient board at a time. That's not a young man's strength. That's the kind you only earn. But patience alone wouldn't have been enough. And I want to be honest about that. Yvonne is the reason any of us are still standing. She knew the truth, and she chose to do the hard, frightening right thing, instead of the easy, comfortable, quiet one. She could have looked away. Plenty would have. Instead, she carried a secret that could have gotten her killed, threw a box at the man she respected most, and trusted he'd understand. Doing right when it costs you everything and earns you nothing but fear, that's the rarest courage there is, and she had it when I needed it most. And then there's the part nobody talks about, the long part, the 8 weeks in a cold cabin when I wanted to quit 100 times. Grief and rage will tell you to give up and call it dignity. They lie. You don't get your life back by surrendering it gracefully. You get it back by refusing to put it down, even when your hands are tired, even when the man you raised is the one who threw it away. I kept going because Hazel deserved a grandfather who fought, and because the 40 families who trusted my son deserved one person who wouldn't look away. So here's what I'd leave you with, whoever you are tonight. Be the kind of person who does the right thing when it's expensive. Use what your years taught you instead of apologizing for them. And when the world tries to throw you out with the trash, bend down, pick up what's yours, and don't you dare stay down. I'm 68 now. I sleep fine. And I have never once been sorry I got back up.